this is Jana with Purl Together. Welcome back to our long-term knit along of Norah's Vintage Afghan, where we're knitting one block a month, all 20, one block a month, and then we're going to assemble it and put it all together. Now you can knit these blocks in any order that you like. However, if you're going to start here, I would recommend that you watch the setup video first, and I'll put a link for that down below. This was block 11, so we're a little bit over halfway. Pretty happy about that. Now I found this block to be a little more tedious than some of the others. However, it was a good learning experience for me after I messed up a couple things, tinked back, all that, as we all do. Mistakes are part of knitting. It's a growth process. If you're interested to know what beanie I've got on today, this was the brioche beanie, the basic brioche beanie project. Links down below. We have a tutorial and a playlist for that as well. So you can make your own brioche beanie if you like. This block of the month video is brought to you by a couple of my brand new patrons. I want to give a hearty shout out and a thank you to Meredith and Judith. Thanks for becoming new patrons. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you want to check out patreon.com/Purl Together. Patreon is a platform that allows people to pledge a little bit of money, just a few dollars each month, to support creators and YouTubers in creating more content for you to enjoy. So thanks for the patrons that are choosing to support this channel. I couldn't do it without you. All right, let's get started. Okay, as you can tell at the beginning of block 11, we have the same beginning as we have for the other 10 blocks, where we just knit some garter stitch, 4 rows of that. And we have row 5 is knit purl all the way across for a little added texture. And then rows 6 through 9 are garter stitch again. So then we're going to do a quick increase row, which is on row 10, where we just knit one, make one a bunch of times all the way across. And the only thing that's I'll point out about that is how I like to do the make one. Now normally I do the lifted increases, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that. But I am going to go ahead and follow the pattern here, where we just make one by lifting the bar between and knitting into the back loop of that. Now if you have sharp needles like I do, you can often just go ahead and knit right in the back of that, and that works out just fine. If you don't have sharp needles necessarily, you go in underneath the front and then just kind of roll your needles around to get that right hand working needle into the back of the stitch, so that you knit in that and twist it and mitigate the possibility of any holes forming there. Now we're going to knit 2, make 1 26 times until we get to where we only have 2 stitches left. I always double count everything after the increase row just to make sure you have the required number of stitches before you start the chart. So we should have 87. I've counted mine twice. So now we're beginning on the wrong side. We've just finished row 10, and you would think that because we're starting row 11, this would be the right side, but it is in fact going to end up being the wrong side of the chart. Let's take a look at the chart for a moment, and I'll point out a couple of things there. So the odd numbers are the wrong side. So row 1 is going to start over here, and you're going to start reading the chart from left to right. Normally when you're working back and forth, you read the charts from right to left, and you would continue right to left if you're working in the round. But because we're working back and forth flat. You'll start on row 1 on the left, read across like this, and go up to row 2, then read across like this, in the same way that you knit. So because we're starting on the wrong side, we'll begin on row 1 and go across. Now we're just going to do all these knits and purls, being careful to repeat the section between the red lines several times. So make sure you read through the chart notes here. They've explained that really well. Then we're not going to do a cable until we get to row 6. So go ahead and knit through those rows, and I'll show you how we're going to manage that cable. All right, I've knitted the first 9 stitches of row 6, and we've come to the first yellow cable. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh, it's just a 3/3, but no, it is not. It actually takes place over 9 stitches, I believe. So what we're going to do is just read it, do exactly what it says without second guessing. I'm bad about that. I'm bad about second guessing things. But these patterns are written pretty well. So you just need to do exactly what it says, which is slip 6 stitches to the cable needle and hold them in the back. This is not going to be a situation, I don't believe, where we can do this without a cable needle. Maybe you can, but I'm not going to try it till I for sure see what's going on. So then we're going to knit 3. Okay, now I'm going to give that a pretty good tug because it's coming over quite a hole. I mean, this is quite an expanse to stretch over the width of 6 stitches. So we're going to knit those 3, giving those a decent tug to snug up any holes that might occur. Now what we're going to do is slip the last 3 stitches from the cable needle to the left needle. So the last 3 would be these. So we're going to put those onto the left needle. Okay, now I'm giving this a little twist because they're kind of tight. They're not slipping off as easily as one might think. Okay, so we put those on the left needle and purl them. Bring your working yarn to the front. Purl these. So we're keeping in pattern here because those were purl stitches in the previous row. All right. If you can, work kind of close to the tips of your needle so you're not stretching things too much here. Then knit 3 from the cable needle. Take your yarn to the back. Now I am going to kind of squish these down on my left needle so I don't lose anything there. This is a little fiddly. There we go. Bring your cable needle to the side and ready to work, and knit those 3 from the cable needle. All right, now we'll carry on in pattern, keeping in mind that we're going to repeat the part between the red lines. So we're just going to purl 3 and do all that again across this row. Okay, let's go through that one more time. So we've put 6 stitches on the cable needle and held them to the back. Now we're going to knit the next 3 from our left needle, just like always. And I do snug that up to try to mitigate the span here across these 6, because that's pretty large really. So give that a nice little tug right there. So we're just going to knit those 3. And then take 3 from the cable needle and put them back on the left working needle. Okay, hold the rest in reserve, and then we're going to purl those because they are. All right, then we'll bring our cable needle back around. This is where I give everything a little scooch so I don't lose anything off the left side while I'm fussing with the cable needle. So yarn to the back and then knit those off the cable needle. Okay, so this whole cable thing looks really kind of funky and weird. Like, why is this going to look nice? So as you can see, things look a little bit strange going across here, but I think it will all work out. As you know, cables look a little weird while they're still on the needle, but after you get 3 or 4 rows up into the chart, things tend to even out, loosen up a little bit, and look just fine. So work through that. I'm going to go ahead and work through up until I get to row 22, and then we'll show you the cables with the blue symbol. Okay, I've knitted through actually the whole chart one time, and then I'm partway through the second repeat of the whole chart. And I'm going to show you the cable technique that's indicated by the blue symbols in just a moment. But you know, I was a little skeptical about those cables, but it's kind of neat how the cable here just appears out of thin air. And that's what doing those 6 stitches off on the cable needle and then taking the 3 back, you know, and rearranging the order in which you knit them off the cable needle, that's what that produces. So that's just, it's kind of interesting really. So I'm kind of digging it. You know, it's all scrunched up right now because it's not blocked, but after I, you know, dampen it and block that out, that's going to look really cool. All right, so on to row 22. Like I said, I was going to show you row 22 when I got here, but I was in the middle of a Netflix movie and thought, oh, I'll show you when I have more of the whole square to show. So there you go. All right, so row 22, we're just going to start off and knit and purl those first 3 stitches. And then you'll want to slip your 6 stitches to the cable needle again, just as we did before, but this time we're going to hold them to the front. Then, as indicated by the instructions, we're going to knit the next 3. Now I want to scooch everything up and kind of keep your work close to the tip so you don't end up stretching everything out. And I'm going to show you a couple other things in a moment to help mitigate any gaps that you might have and why I just knitted that last stitch into the back loop. I'll show you why in just a moment, because it's what I did on the previous row. So next thing we want to do, just like we did before, is take these last 3 that we put on the cable needle back to the left side. And then we're going to purl those because they are purl stitches originally. So we'll purl those and then finally knit those 3 from the cable needle. So we're doing the same as before. We're just doing everything in the front this time, crossing it all over the front. Okay, then we're going to have these 2 cables are going to be separated by a little, or 1 column here of purl stitches. Now here's one thing to consider. When we come from a knit stitch to a purl stitch, sometimes there's some extra yarn introduced. Well, there is extra yarn introduced all the time, not sometimes we want to bring the yarn to the front. And to help mitigate that, sometimes you'll have a big ladder or a big gap right here, particularly when we do cables and everything's wonky because of that. So one way to mitigate that, you can put your needle in and then give this a good little tug to tighten everything up and wrap that like normal. Now the other way you can do it is instead of wrapping counterclockwise as you normally would, you can go ahead and go clockwise. So you're lessening literally you're lessening the amount of yarn that it takes to go all the way around. You're lessening that by like half by going clockwise rather than counterclockwise. Now when you do that, it does create a twisted stitch. It's not going to look the same when you come back on the purl side, on the wrong side of your fabric. You'll notice when you knit these 3 stitches on the other side, you'll notice that this one is not oriented the same. Now, if you're paying attention at all, you'll see that right away when you come back across. You'll know that it's the 3rd one in this column, and you'll knit that into the back loop. But that is a way to make everything more even. So you might want to experiment with that. You know, I messed around with that technique quite a bit down in here and decided that I would go ahead and do that. The other reason that I like doing that on this particular block is because these cables, you know, over the span of 6 stitches, that does tend to widen everything out. So wrapping that first purl stitch the other direction can definitely help. Now, if you forget to knit it into the back loop on the return trip, is it a crisis? Probably not. But, you know, if you pay attention to your knitting just a little bit, you'll notice that that has happened and you'll see it. Let me carry on across. See, there's one that's backwards that I knitted into the back loop on my return trip on the last row. So I'm just going to go in and reorient that correctly as I'm slipping it off to my cable needle. So if you're paying attention at all, you'll notice that, you'll see it. And so I don't think it's going to be a big issue. Now again, you can minimize some of these gaps by working toward the ends, towards the tips of your needles, and just making sure to hang on to everything pretty firmly, since we are under a little bit of tension here performing these cables. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing, same as before with the yellow symbol cables where we held everything to the back. It's just reversed. We're going to purl those next ones. Now I'm not going to purl this one going the other direction because I'm pulling it toward the left. The natural tension of it wants to bring it back to the right. So I'm not too worried about there being a big gap on this particular transition between a knit stitch and a purl. All right, and then we're just going to bring these last knit stitches back over. Okay. Now things are a little tight, but it will loosen up, particularly in the next subsequent rows. You know, things tend to relax. And if you'll notice too, because it's a little tight, I'm like drawing through a little bit. I'm drawing through a little bit more working yarn here just to help that a little bit. Okay, now this is definitely where we have pulled this quite significantly off to the left. So this is definitely a spot where I'm going to wrap my yarn the other direction on that purl stitch just to help mitigate any potential gaps. Okay, I'm going to carry on across the row doing those cables, 6 stitch cables to the front. And then on my way back, when I purl back across, when I knit and purl my way back across, I'll show you what I mean about correcting the stitch orientation on those ones that we're wrapping the opposite way. Okay, so I'm on row 23 and I'm on my way back across the wrong side of my fabric, and you can see where I've done the cables. You know, it's definitely pulled across here where we perform those. And what I want to show you here is that I've done the purl 3 and now I'm doing a knit 3, which on the right side would be the section of purls where I wrapped one of them the wrong way on purpose. So as I knit across, which is a purl on the right side, it's a knit on the wrong side, you can tell that this stitch right here is oriented the wrong way. So I need to knit into the back loop of that to correct it. And those will be plainly apparent as you're working across on the odd numbered rows. So let's look for another one here so you can see what I'm referring to. Usually it'll be the last one of a section of 3 knit ones. You can tell that there it is right there. The last one needs to be corrected. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And again, here, this is the first purl of that where it got stretched across for the cable, and I am going to go ahead and wrap that one clockwise to help close that up. I'm also going to give that a little tug to help distribute the horizontal bar between the stitches and kind of even all that out a little bit. So, you know, experiment with that, see what works best for you and what you think has the best results. Now, again, this one needs to be knitted into the back loop because that's the third of that sequence of 3. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on here and knit through the chart repeat part way up to, I believe, row 21, the instructions say. And then, okay, as indicated by the instructions, I've worked through the whole chart twice and then the third time up to row 21. So now we're going to decrease back down to our original cast on number of stitches by just following exactly what it says in the pattern, knit 2 together twice, then knit 1, knit 2 together 27 more times until we're back down to our original 57 stitches, which we always want to double count. Now when you're doing the knit 1, knit 2 together, 27 times, if you don't want to count 27 times, you don't want to keep track of that, you're just going to keep doing that sequence, knit 1, knit 2 together, until you get to just 2 stitches left at the end that you're going to knit 2 together, and then double count your 57. Okay, yay! I've completed the decrease row, and I have 57 stitches as in my original cast on. Now I'm just going to turn it over and do my 4 rows of garter stitch, and the 5th row alternating knits and purls, 4 more rows of garter stitch, just like we did in rows 1 through 9. Then I will bind off knitwise, block it, and be done. I found this block to be a little bit tedious, but overall I like how it looks. I think it's an interesting cable design, but I did find that my tension at least was pretty tight, so I had to block it pretty aggressively. I don't know if you'll find that as well or not, but I mean it's going to go together okay with all the other blocks. I just found that I needed to, you know, press it out and pin it pretty aggressively to make it fit the measurements that I need it to be for the rest of the block. All right, so if you find these videos to be helpful, click that subscribe button, the bell notification so you'll know when I upload something new, and definitely give it a thumbs up. That helps YouTube put me in the recommended category or however all that works. But anyway, give it a thumbs up if you find these videos helpful. All right, thanks so much for watching.